Sherwin joins us now live from New York with the very latest. Sherwin, some have described this moment as this reporter being in the right chat at the right time to be able to get what journalists would regard as gold. So how is this matter being covered in the United States? I can imagine it's leading the news cycle right now.
Well, Bongi, there's so much going on in the United States, and this has managed to go to the top of the pile, essentially. I mean, it has been covered, the breadth of this revelation has been covered on all the television, cable news channels, all the channels. It's the top story in all the newspapers. And I think fueled by the very public hearings of the Senate Intelligence Select Committee on Tuesday and today in the House, a similar hearing. With two of the officials that were part of this group. So essentially the story lands on Monday, and then you have this pre-programmed hearing on Senate intelligence the very next day. And that's why you see Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence, and the CIA Director appearing before the committee, where this is the story that dominated. I'm sure they wanted to talk about Ukraine and other intelligence threats around the world, but this very much became the dominant story. And it really does speak to a long-standing issue about how U.S. government officials manage classified information, be that when Donald Trump was a former president and he took alleged classified documents to Mar-a-Lago and refused to hand them over when it was requested by the government. But also it goes back to 2016 and Hillary Clinton's handling of official work on a private server, which became a big talking point within the Trump campaign at the time, because remember, she was running against him for president in 2016 and subsequently in the Trump administration. And some of the very people, including the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, in an interview as a Fox contributor on the Fox News channel, says the following in 2016, quote, "Any security professional, military, government, or otherwise would be fired on the spot for this type of conduct and criminally prosecuted for being so reckless with this kind of information." And so, Hillary Clinton this week posting on social media platform X saying the following. She posts a link to the Atlantic story with the following message. She posted the two eyes emoji and a message, quote, "You have to be kidding me." So a long-standing issue about how officials in the United States manage classified information, and this is a story, certainly from a democratic perspective, it's certainly not going to go away anytime soon.
Definitely not, Sherwin. And the text thread shared by The Atlantic also took aim at U.S. European allies, particularly from U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance in the Signal chat. Just share with us some of the details.
What part of the shifting sands of geopolitical alliances the United States very much has, as South Africans will know, the Europeans in their sights, right? You'll remember J.D. Vance, the vice president, attending the Munich Security Conference where he disparaged democracy and the freedom of speech in Europe. You've heard the Trump administration rail against Europeans in terms of trade deficits between the two countries, the imposition of tariffs, which is something the world is now grappling with. And J.D. Vance in this thread says the following. So remember, they're now planning the strike on the Houthis in Yemen as it relates to shipping transiting the Suez Canal from the Red Sea into the Mediterranean. And he makes the point that only 3% of U.S. trade runs through the Suez Canal, but 40% of European trade also runs through that canal. So he makes the point, and this is a quote, "There is a real risk that the public doesn't understand this. I'm not sure the president is aware how inconsistent this is with his message on Europe right now. If you think we should do it, let's go. I just hate bailing Europe out again." Hegseth, the defense secretary, then responds, "I fully share your loathing of the European freeloading. It's pathetic." So, I think the Europeans have now gotten the message that the United States perhaps is not their closest ally anymore. And there is definitely a reconfiguration happening within the European defense framework in terms of, bolstering their ability to respond without the traditional ally that has been the United States. And these very pointed remarks in this chat by the Vice President of the United States speaks very much to the shift in posture.
Interesting. Freeloading. Wow, what a term. And a choice of words there, Sherwin. Let's also look at this, because out of this, right, there's also now a lawsuit that has been filed against officials on that particular chat group. This is by Transparency nonprofit American Oversight. What do they allege?
Well, we'll just pile this one onto the pile of all the lawsuits that the Trump administration is facing, be that for executive orders that people disagree with, or the use of a Signal chat platform to discuss what they believe is classified military information. The lawsuit is filed by American Oversight. It's a transparency, non-profit, non-aligned group. And let me just read you the statement they put out, Bongiwe, very briefly. Following bombshell reporting that top Trump administration officials use auto-deleting messaging app Signal to coordinate high-level, allegedly classified war operations, the non-partisan watchdog American Oversight has filed a lawsuit against those officials for violations of the Federal Records Act and the Administrative Procedure Act. So in the United States, official government business has to be retained in terms of record keeping, in terms of legislation that governs the federal record keeping in the United States. So this lawsuit speaks to that. The lawsuit seeks to prevent further unlawful destruction of federal records and to compel the recovery of any records created through their unauthorized use of Signal. So it's similar to what the Trump administration, that Trump did when he left office, taking those classified documents. There's record keeping that needs to be managed by the Records Act in the United States, and this lawsuit speaks to the retention of those records and the unauthorized use here of an app that was not approved in terms of the classified distribution of information by the United States government.
Sure. One wonders what happens now. Thank you so much for that update there, Sherwin. That's SABC News correspondent Sherwin Bryce-Pease, live for us from New York with the very latest on this developing story.